Okay, so today, guys, we are on our second to last team analysis video. And today I'm going to be starting with Louis N or Louis Nordone. I hope I pronounced that right. I think I can pronounce that one right. My apologies if I didn't. Uh, but these team analysis for guys, these team analysis are for the National Competitive Pokemon League, or the NCPL. It's a Facebook group. It's private. If you're interested in competing, check that group out. It's very, very competitive. A lot of very strong players. For example, this draft, I don't think there's any bad drafts. There's just good and very good. So have a look at the people's teams, and you can see for yourself of how good these players are. But anyways, let's talk about Louis' team. Today he drafted, well, not today, but he drafted Blacephalon, Nidoqueen, Breloom, Mega Ampharos, Corviknight, Silvally Fairy, Suicune, Gligar, and Scyther. So, first off, right away, he is got a problem with rocks. He does have reliable ways to get it off in 3 people: Corviknight, Gligar, and Silvally Fairy. So that's fine, but that's just the first thing that I notice. His team is kind of bulky. It's like a bulky offensive team. Mega Ampharos getting those slow volt switches is really going to help Blacephalon. Wall break and Scyther either get those U-turns, or Swords Dance do a wing beat in, which hits very, very, very hard, surprisingly hard. So definitely don't underestimate it. If Scyther is in against you, I would really recommend calking, because that wing beat hits very, very hard. It gets the double technician boost, so be careful of that. Not much more else that I can see at face value, but let's go in individually, and maybe I can spot some more things for you guys. And let's start with offense here. Where is offense a 7.5? He has strong offense, don't get me wrong, but Blacephalon being weak to rocks, and Mega Ampharos, Blacephalon cannot volt switch into each other if the opponent is going for an earthquake, so that is the only issue here. What am I thinking? It's a slow volt switch. So he can go into Blacephalon, but he does risk Blacephalon. If Blacephalon can't pick up the kill, he does risk Blacephalon getting scooped here, which has happened a couple times, where his Blacephalon's gone down early, when I think that it's very critical to keep Blacephalon for later in the game, especially with Beast Boost. He has Scyther as well, which, like I was mentioning, that dual wing beat that it got in this gen here is very, very strong. It hits very hard. Double technician boost. Scyther can run Eviolite, so it is quite bulky. Times 4 to rocks, so that is going to be your strongest way to take down Scyther immediately. Especially if it's running Eviolite, it's going to be pretty hard to get an Oko on it. So unless you're running, Specs, Fire Blast, or something like that, I find it very hard to believe you're going to take down an Eviolite Scyther in one hit. Or you got, Stone Edge or Banded Stone Edge or something like that. Next we have Breloom. It's got Spore, Mach Punch, quite annoying. It has Technician and what is it? Poison Heal, I think, is the other one. Although I find Technician very good for Breloom. Sorry, I just want to look at it real quick. Yeah, Poison Heal. I find Technician very good for Breloom, but I find Poison Heal makes Breloom much harder to kill, and it sticks around a lot longer, and I think that might be more useful to Louis, especially because his team is quite bulky anyway, so the longer things are around, the more damage he can get off in the end. So I can mention is Nidoqueen. It does get sheer force. It does have great coverage in Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Sludge Wave, Earth Power. Not to mention Stab, Sludge Wave, Stab, Earth Power with sheer force. even though its special attack isn't quite high, I think it's around the mid 200s. That sheer force boost makes it quite annoying because it's a pretty bulky Pokemon, can set up rocks and then cover whoever wants to switch in, or just hit it pretty hard. So, um, I wouldn't normally mention this Pokemon as like offensive, but he has been using it quite often offensively. Is the Silvally Fairy? I expected that to be more of a defensive Pokemon for him, but he's been using it very offensively. So it does get a good move pool. Its speed tier is high. It's quite bulky. It being a fairy type gets a stab fairy at a 120 base attack for multi attack. So I guess that hits quite hard, and there isn't much things that resist fairy besides steel and poison. So and fire, right? So 7.5 though, the problems that I'm seeing with his offense is the rock weakness between Blacephalon and Scyther, and that's kind of making me rate it lower. Not to mention the speed of his offense is quite low. Even though he gets those slow volt switches with Mega Ampharos and he can get something in optimally, the team still suffers to a fast Scarfer. For example, if somebody had something for his team like a Zuraora, okay, Zuraora does pretty good against this team. If they scarf Zuraora, I mean, it's just outspeeding everything no matter what. Now that's not optimal, but like, it does beat out a lot of things. Scarf Zuraora would still it would outspeed the Blacephalon. It would KO the Blacephalon. I'm pretty sure it KOs with knockoff, but let's double check. That's just an example of what I mean. His team would suffer to a really fast team. With things like Greninja, Cinderace, Zuraora, Dragapult running around, having no option to scarf outside of Blacephalon really is kind of problematic, because you're generally not going to want to scarf Scyther. You could, since it has U-turn, but its coverage isn't that great, so it's not the greatest revenge killer. Breloom, its speed is quite low. I think it's 289 max, Jolly. Don't quote me on that one, but again, its coverage is okay, but it's low for a scarf, especially if you needed to revenge kill anything. It's quite low. You generally would want something around Scyther speed with good coverage. So Blacephalon having Shadow Ball and Fire Blast, it's quite good because Shadow Ball is neutral to almost everything, aside from normal, of course, right? But you understand what I mean there, right? I hope you guys do. I just want to double check if the Zuraora kills with knockoff, because Blacephalon's stats are, yeah, its base defense is 53, so I'm pretty sure even if Zuraora ran knockoff, it still KOs. Yeah. So if it run yeah, if it was running Scarf, knockoff still does 127% to 151% to Blacephalon. So that is really, really rough for Blacephalon, especially if an opponent has something that's fast like that and they can scarf it. Because see, what I mean by that is, like, obviously you can scarf something that's lower speed and it outspeeds a Blacephalon, but if Louis decides to scarf the Blacephalon and it comes up against a scarf Zuraora, that Blacephalon's like not useless, but like its sweep stops. If he sends in Blacephalon early and he gets scoops up a kill and it's scarfed, so it's like, holy fuck, this is really strong, but the opponent has scarfed a Zuraora, Blacephalon gets that boost and they switch in Zuraora and he's like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna outspeed it because I'm scarfed. Turns out Zuraora's scarf knockoff kills your Blacephalon in one hit. This is what I'm saying, right? Even like Noivern. Noivern's another one. He comes in, he dark pulses, and he choice scarf Noivern. Naturally outspeeds Blacephalon, so you choice scarf it. Make sure that Blacephalon gets slowed down if it's sweeping with Beast Boost. Dark pulse it, boom, end of Blacephalon, right? So that's what I mean by his team suffers to really, really fast teams. Anyways, so that's kind of what I'm seeing with the offense right now. It's bulky, it's not bad, but having two Pokemon that are very, very weak to rocks, or just suffer his offense suffers to speed, That is why I have it at a 7.5. The Mega Ampharos is really helping his team with those slow volt switches, and the bulk of it. But I feel like when Mega Ampharos goes down, there's going to be a lot of weight relied upon on that Suicune and Corviknight to take out checks. So next up though is defense. I rated his defense an 8. Now, hear me out, okay? He has Corviknight and Suicune, which are great together, but and Ampharos, you can kind of form a unconventional core because Corviknight and Suicune are both weak to Thunderbolt, and Ampharos can take Thunderbolt. But once Ampharos goes down, and the opponent has a Thunderbolter or a Wild Charger or whatever, Louis has combated that with like Protects and Roosts and his EV spreads, but they both suffer to Electric weakness, and the amount of weight put on Corviknight and Suicune is heavy on his team. He's built around them because he's got Gligar and he's got Nidoqueen and he's got Mega Ampharos to absorb those Thunderbolts. But the thing is to rely on those those things like EV spread and other Pokemon to make sure that these Pokemon don't get double checked is it brings it down a little bit. Now they're really strong, and the pressure Suicune can take out its own threats because it can pressure stall them into the point where they don't have enough PP to actually kill the Suicune. So in that regard, I find it very strong. He can double pressure stall like we seen him do earlier in the draft, to take out threats that are a problem, as well as the EV spread. I mean, Spadef Corviknight is no joke. That thing tanks super effective attacks like they're nothing. So when I'm saying this, I don't want you guys to think I'm saying it's bad. I'm just meaning the way you can double cover it is if Louis doesn't bring a resist or like an immunity in the ground types, his Suicune and Corviknight become kind of not useless, but like he's got to be more aware of the switch. So he's not going to want to switch them in too often to those attacks, is all I'm saying. So like if Mega Ampharos goes down and Nidoqueen or Gligar goes down, he's got to be very wary of how he gets Suicune and Corviknight in, as they share the same weakness. So now I'm double thinking myself that Corviknight isn't weak to Electric. Oh, okay, it's weak to Electric. Okay, just wanted to clear that up. But defensively, I mean, he's got really strong Pokemon in Corviknight and Suicune. If you don't have a really strong threat to those Pokemon, those two Pokemon alone, or even one of them, will probably dismantle your team, depending on what he brings on them. So, by no means do I think it's bad. I just think there's a lot of weight relied on those two Pokemon defensively. He does have Gligar, which is very, very bulky, especially with Eviolite. But again, Eviolite weak, sharing that with Blacephalon, and also Scyther to some extent. But this is also helping his Mega Ampharos come in and get that slow volt switch off, or just wall break with Thunderbolt or Draco. Does it learn Draco Meteor, or is it Dragon Pulse? Regardless, its special attack is high enough to just chip wall break down. So Gligar also being a reliable defogger, I believe it also gets U-turn, which is really good. It sets up rocks very easily for his team. Gligar setting up rocks allows Nidoqueen to be more offensive and not have to run rocks. Although I wouldn't recommend it. Having two rockers is good just in case Gligar doesn't have optimal switches in, and that Nidoqueen does. So I mean, Gligar's a good pick for him. It also helps him with that Thunderbolt weakness between Corviknight and Suicune, which is also shared with Scyther. So Gligar, great Pokemon defensively for him. Last but not least is Nidoqueen and Silvally Fairy. Now, Silvally Fairy being its defogger or an offensive Silvally like he's been using, with Parting Shot, U-turn, and its range of attacks and Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Draco Meteor. I think I don't know if it has Ice Beam, but Bolt, Thunderbolt and Flamethrower are quite useful. So that's quite good. And then Nidoqueen being that bulky lead, hard to switch into because you don't know what it's got on it for coverage. Basically can cover anything with Bolt Beam, Sludge Wave, and Earth Power. It's pretty hard to switch into, so especially if it's lead, kind of got to figure out, scout what it's got going for it. So defensively, his team's an 8 though. By no means is that bad. I think his defense is very strong, and if you don't have proper checks for those two Pokemon that I mentioned earlier, Corviknight and Suicune, you're going to have a real problem with those two Pokemon dismantling your team or pressure stalling to the point where you won't be able to take them out with those said moves. So be really aware when you're versing him on those two Pokemon and what you need to build to defeat them. Next up, we have speed. So I mentioned this kind of earlier at face value. His speed is very heavily carried by Blacephalon here and Mach Punch, or the Scyther at 339 speed. Jolly. So as I was saying, his team really suffers to like a really fast Scarfer. Something that naturally outspeeds Blacephalon gets scarfed. Although it was more than likely be walled by Corviknight or Suicune. Taking out Louis' offensive threats very early puts so much weight on his defensive core, and allows you to kind of breathe, because the Blacephalon is a sweeper. It's his, it's got the Beast Boost, it's got Calm Mind. I don't know if it has Nasty Plot. If it does, that's very terrifying, but you understand what I mean here. His speed is 348, I believe, Timid on Blacephalon, and then 339 Jolly on Scyther. So that's not bad, but having only two Pokemon in those tiers, Silvally is honorable mention at 317, is in draft really, really problematic, especially with just Pokemon that are naturally fast, Zeraora, Dragapult, Keldeo, Noivern, things like that, or with people running Sandrush and Surge Surfer and Swift Swim. This is a very big problem for Louis, trying to deal with speed with only one really good Scarfer in being Blacephalon. He could Scarf Nidoqueen, but it doesn't really have the power. It is actually a really reliable revenge killer though. If it's just got to clean up for kills. It can't one-hit KO, but it can clean up kills. So if he's going to Scarf anybody, I would like to see the Nidoqueen Scarf, since it's got the coverage to revenge kill. But it is falling in that really, not bad, but really low speed category, speed tier for choice scarfing. So falling to being naturally outsped by some Pokemon like Dragapult. I'm going to calc this real quick for you guys so you understand what I'm talking about here. We'll say timid. We'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay. I have a feeling I'm gonna be wrong here. No. Okay. I was right. More or less. So choice scarf timid Nidoqueen is 414 speed. Natural speed from Zeraora is 423. Now, obviously, Nidoqueen can kill Zeraora, and Zeraora can't kill Nidoqueen with its usual moveset, and I don't think it would one-hit KO anyway if it had something super effective. But you got things like Dragapult 2, which, again, if in Durgalgi there. Dragapult naturally... Why are they... Okay. Dragapult at 421 naturally outspeeds the Nidoqueen with Dragon Darts. It does 64 to 75%. That's jolly. And then you got let's see, the Choice Scarf Keldeo, which is another scarf option that's usually ran to clean up teams. That's Scarf at 346 speed, making it 519. So this is what I mean. Like, Regular Scarfers and things that just have high natural speed is going to be a really big problem for Louis, and his speed tier is quite low. He does have Mega Ampharos, which gets those slow volt switches and gets him in those optimal switches. But again, this is putting a lot of pressure on Louis' defensive core to take out certain threats. That's not bad by any means, but it's very hard in draft, especially when people can just prepare for that and draft for it. So I would like to see Louis clean up his speed tier a little bit. I think it would really help his team if he did. So just like what I mean by that, fix up is get a Pokemon that can be reliably scarfed if it's needed. Nidoqueen is okay in revenge killing, but it does suffer to faster Scarfers or just Pokemon that naturally outspeed it that could come in on it. You know, like for example, Nidoqueen comes in, gets a revenge kill, Dragapult comes in, Dragapult U-turns, now you're at a disadvantage again. This is what I'm talking about. Instead, you if you had a fast Scarfer with Nidoqueen's coverage, you Dragapult wouldn't be able to come in because it would threaten with Ice Beam. And you know, Ice Beam for the kill on the revenge kill, and then Dragapult can't come in because, well, now that Ice Beam Scarfer is a threat, right? So I won't hang myself up too much on the speed. I just feel like that is something that really brings Louis' team down, and I think he has a good team. I just feel like his speed tier needs to be a teeny bit better. So it's a 6. Again, 6 is not bad. Bad is when you drop below 5, and that's a real problem, and that's going to be a big hindrance to your team. So 6 is still above average, 5 being average. So please do not take that as, my God, your team's bad. This is a huge problem, because 6 is not that. So next up we have hazards. Louis has a lot of reliable ways to set up his hazards and get them off. Setting up hazards in Nidoqueen is very reliable. Nidoqueen generally doesn't die to a lot of things in one hit. It's quite bulky. Its HP reaches 394, I believe. I want to check that really quick. 384. My apologies. I was close though. So yeah, Nidoqueen being a very reliable rocker, Gligar as well being a very reliable rocker. Generally doesn't even die to super effective moves. With Eviolite being so bulky, and putting the proper amount of EVs to live an Ice Beam if you wanted to. Not 100% if it will live every Ice Beam, so please don't take my word for that. But my point is being it's very bulky, especially with Eviolite. It's if you don't have something like that, it's generally not threatened by anything and can just set up Stealth Rocks. Gligar also being a reliable defogger because of its bulk. And then you got Corviknight, who's phenomenal defogger. It generally doesn't get one hit KO'd ever because of its Spadef being so high for that type of Pokemon with its resistances. And then its HP being high and its speed tier being okay. It generally always going to get that defog off. Same with Silvally, being Silvally Fairy too. Not a lot of people have steel types or poison types or steel coverage or poison coverage. So Silvally, you know, almost always has opportunities to get that defog, especially with its speed tier, its bulk. It's pretty reliable. So I don't know if Scyther gets defog. I'm going to check because it can be something to mention if it's like absolutely needed. It does learn defog, so Scyther can run defog. I would not recommend it at all, as it's one of Louis' faster attackers, and he absolutely needs that speed on that offensive side of his team. So especially when you got Pokemon like Gligar and Corviknight to defog, there's no point in running Scyther with defog, but Scyther can run it. So hazards was an 8. I think he's got really reliable ways to get hazards up and get hazards off. Do I think it's the best for hazards? No, but I think it's good. So that definitely deserves an 8. Momentum, I rated a 7. Now he's got U-turn in Gligar, U-turn in Scyther, Parting Shot and U-turn in Silvally, U-turn in Corviknight, and Volt Switch and Mega Ampharos. Now you might think that that's a lot of momentum that he can gain, but the problem with it is all of his U-turners and Volt Switchers generally share similar weaknesses. So he can't get that vortex that is really good. As an example of a vortex, what would be one? Yeah, I'll explain what I mean by vortex. So, vortex being, you U-turn into something that's optimal, in the way that when you U-turn into that Pokemon, it's going to be able to tank the attack. The opponent's going to be forced to switch. You U-turn or Volt Switch with that Pokemon that you just brought in back into the Pokemon that you just took out, and the opponent's back in the same spot they just were in, and you create this vortex of, well, now the opponent's got to double predict and or play a mind game with you to get an optimal play in. That would be a vortex. You trap the opponent into making the same mistake multiple times. That's how I would explain vortex. I can't give you guys an example off the top of my head. I wish I wrote that down in my notes, but vortex is trapping your opponent into making the same move more than once, and forcing them to make a hard prediction that could cost them a lot of damage, a death on their team, or just a really bad momentum move for them. So that's what I would mean by vortex. So Scyther can't U-turn really into Gligar, especially if the Pokemon's carrying Ice Beam. He can't really U-turn into Corviknight if they're carrying Thunderbolt. I mean, he can. Corviknight is bulky enough. He can U-turn into Mega Ampharos, and Mega Ampharos has those options because it's bulky enough. But again, he can't U-turn because Ice Beam. If they're carrying Ice Beam, he's not going to U-turn into that. He can't U-turn into the Gligar. So them sharing those weaknesses, it really makes it hard if he wants to like create a vortex between Scyther and Gligar or Scyther and Corviknight. Unless the coverage isn't there, you can do that, but it's generally not the greatest, I would say, like between his Pokemon. By no means is momentum bad. If the team doesn't have the coverage for it, he's gonna keep U-turning. U-turn into Suicune, protect, sub, pressure stall, or set up Calm Mind, whatever the case, or go into Mega Ampharos, get a slow Volt Switch off, get Blacephalon in for free. Blacephalon starts breaking down your team. Those things can happen, but I just mean his momentum can easily be halted by a Pokemon that has wide variety of coverage. He doesn't have the ability to always create a vortex. It's very dependent on what the opponent brings. So again, by no means is that bad. It's a 7. That's 2 above average. I rated his team as a whole as a 36.5. That is above average. That's at the in between of good and really good. I think it can be a lot better if he fixes that speed tier. Can it be worse? Probably not. Unless he makes some weird trades and trades away some of his optimal Pokemon. I don't think Louis will do that. He's a smart player. But I do think he needs to fix that speed tier to bring up his speed a bit on his team. I think he suffers to fast Pokemon, especially if they're running taunt and stuff like that to break down his his defensive checks as well. As we've seen that happen to his Suicune. He had nothing to outspeed the Grand later in the game, or even early in the game, unless he's Choice Scarfing Blacephalon. But again, that brings down Blacephalon's ability to break down teams with Fire Blast and Shadow Ball, so or just Calm Mind setup. So I think Louis' team is good. I think if you don't have coverage for that Corviknight and Suicune, it will break down your team. But he does have some pretty big holes on his team. He has 5 Pokemon that are times 5. 5 Pokemon weak to Ice. He has 3 Pokemon weak to Electric, and 2 Pokemon that are weak to Stealth Rocks. So, those are really, really big holes, especially that Ice weakness. If they're carrying Ice and then something to cover whatever needs to, like, if they have Ice and they're gonna switch out to something like Corviknight or Blacephalon, and the opponent has something to cover that as well, that's going to be a huge issue for Louis, especially if they're able to predict those things. So that's a huge thing that I think he should clean up, and the opponent should definitely recognize. So, but yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying these. We only got this one and one more. I hope I can figure out something else to do after these videos, maybe just more commentary on the games. I'll certainly try and get better at those, but I hope you guys are enjoying these, and as always, thank you so much for coming and watching or liking the video. I do appreciate that very, very much. So on to the next one. Thanks, guys. Paired up with Louis' team analysis today is Laurel A, Laurel H. Again, I'm sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but I feel like I can pronounce that one correctly. So if you guys are new and this is your first one, this is for the NCPL. I didn't say this in the previous video, I totally forgot, but I rate people's teams. And I want to say that my ratings are not be all end all. I'm not some Pokemon guru or anything like that. This is just what I'm seeing, and a very broad way of looking at somebody's team. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into team building, like weaknesses and setup sweepers, wall breakers, things like that that you can rate. I just rated it on 5 things that I find very core to making a good team, which are, you'll see offense there, defense, speed, hazards, momentum. Each are rated out of 10, 10 being the best, 0 being the worst, and then a total score below it. Best being 50, that would be perfect, and 0 being the worst, which nobody in this draft is even close to. So, but today is Laurel's team. She drafted a Zygarde 50, Tangrowth, Corsola G, Passimian, Noctowl, Rotom Wash, Mega Aggron, Cinderace, Comfey, and Sigilif. I hope I pronounced that one right on any of those two. But anyways, at face value, Laurel's team is hella strong. She has got a very, very good draft. Looking at this team, it's very hard to believe that she's going to be minus in any in win-loss at all. Her team has great options. It covers basically everything. I do want to say that I think Laurel drafts really good every time, and if she ever loses, it's only coming down to her decisions in game or team building. I think she drafts good enough every single time that her team should break her or win-loss even every single time. If you guys are wanting to look at a team that's built very balanced, just a good draft that covers a lot, Laurel's team has that. So I will get into the things that her team lacks, but again, there's very little, so you'll have to bear with me if I don't have much to mention on weaknesses here. So, but let's break it down individually, starting with offense. I rated her offense a 9. I'm gonna start with Zygarde. Completely broken Pokemon. I can't believe this was allowed in the draft. This was banned in Showdown quite a long time ago. Now, I was in Showdown for a little while, and it was one of those Pokemon that was on almost every single team. It's bulk. I'll read its bulk for you so you guys understand what I'm getting at here. And I want to say this isn't meaning that, like, oh my god, Laurel drafted a broken Pokemon, that's why she's doing good. That is not what it is. If anything, Zygarde hasn't really been as good for her as maybe she thought it was, or even I thought it would be. But again, it's still very strong. Almost broken Pokemon. So here's the stats, okay? 108 HP, 100 attack, 121 defense, 81 special attack, 95 SPDF, and 95 speed. So pair that with its ability to get Dragon Dance, its typing, its ability to get Coil, and a completely crazy move in Thousand Arrows that hits Flying type. Thousand Arrows is a ground type? Yeah, ground type move. 90 base power as well, 100% accuracy, hits flying types. It brings them it does smackdown, so brings flying types down to the ground. So again, that helps the whole team. It also it just means he can just run 1,000 arrows. He doesn't need to run any other move. He can run Dragon Dance, Coil, 1,000 arrows, and I don't know what else would you want to run. Substitute, maybe Dragon Tail, or some optimal coverage move. But or you could just run Draco Meteor in case they're burning you or something like that, or Toxic to break down the walls that come in. But those are some seriously high stats with some seriously good moves. 1,000 arrows being, in my opinion, probably one of the best moves in the entire game. A ground type move that's 90 base power, 100% accuracy, hits flying types and does smackdown. So that's very, very strong. So I expect this Pokemon to do some big things. Sorry, big things in the draft later. It's very versatile. It can run attack, it can run special attack, it can be a defensive check. It's good enough to do any of those things. It has the stats to do that. So when you prepare for this team, definitely make sure you have something to deal with that Zygarde 50%. Even ice punches and things like that, those aren't going to be enough. You need to figure out what you're going to do when you ice punch it and it doesn't KO. Those are the things that you need to figure out what to do. As we've seen, people are picking up on that and usually trying to get a Toxic off on it. Those are particular ways to beat it. So, but I won't be stuck on that too long. I just think that's a very strong offensive pick for Laurel and very strong to her offensive side. Next up is that I'm going to mention is Cinderace. This Pokemon went surprisingly late. It wasn't like late, but it was later than I expected. We allowed Blaze, but not Libero, and I think that's what turned people away. But it doesn't make sense why it would turn people away. When Blaze was the only thing Cinderace had, it was still a top Pokemon. It has one of the best hazard controls in the game in Court Change. This means that yes, you can't set up hazards yourself. This includes screens and rocks, but it deters the opponent from setting up screens and rocks. And deterring screens in this draft with so many people running screens is so strong to allowing your offense to run over the opponent. Not to mention its speed tier is 370. That is very, very, very good. Its coverage is insane. It gets Gunk Shot, High Jump Kick, U-Turn, Sucker Punch, and its own move, Pyro Ball, which is 120 fire attack, I believe, and 90% accuracy. The 90% accuracy kind of sucks sometimes because that has bit people in the butt before. But again, with that coverage, that speed, not to mention its attack is in the 340, 330 range. It might even be higher. I'm going to check right now. No, 331 in the Jolly. But with that coverage, it also gets Zen Headbutt. I mean, that coverage, the ability to deter screens, its other base stats really aren't that bad at 80 HP. That's quite good. So with no investment into it, that's sitting at 301, which is great for an offensive Pokemon. It can live certain attacks that aren't super effective. So another phenomenal offensive pick for her. Yes, they're both physical, but with the setup power Zygarde has and the momentum that Cinderace and the coverage that he has, it's not too much to worry about for her. So next we have Passimian. Passimian has shown to be one of her most reliable Pokemon offensively. With its coverage, Passimian has great coverage as well. This is a thing that's notable in her team. She has a lot of coverage in moves. But Passimian, for example, it has Close Combat, Aerial Ace, Seed Bomb. What else do we have here? Knockoff, Rock Slide, Earthquake, U-Turn as well. It has Brick Break for screens, has Iron Head, Iron Tail. What else do we got? I mean, that's really all it needs. It has Gunk Shot as well. So I mean, the amount of coverage in that is great. Its speed tier is good as well. base 80 is not bad, but it's a good scarfer for her. Its attack is base 120, so it's definitely a reliable scarfer because it has enough attack running Jolly. It's also a defiant for her, so it deters defoggers. So if she does want to bring rocks or screens, she can do that, and she can really threaten with that Pessimian in the defiant. +2 Pessimian close combat is nothing to look over unless you have a ghost type, of course, right? So again, a really good lead for her too, because you don't know what it's running. Can you turn out to scout a move, or scout who you're leading off with? So really, really good pick by her again. So next is so these next ones that I'm going to mention, they're generally a defensive Pokemon, but they have really offensive options that are hard to beat down. So Mega Aeron, Curse, Rest, Sleep Talk, pretty annoying. It getting filter as well. It usually survives anything, and then provide that with Curse and Rest and Sleep Talk. If you don't have a special attacking threat for it, it's probably going to take out a couple Pokemon, if not your whole team. So we did see that in one game that cursing Mega Steelix was a huge problem, and it took down 3 to 4 Pokemon, I think. So definitely an offensive threat that you need to scout out, and not just let it sit in the back and wait for the opportunity to come in. You need to figure out what that Aggron is and then adjust accordingly. So last on the offensive side that I want to mention is Rotom Wash. This Pokemon has the bulk to to set up. I think it got Nasty Plot this season. I don't know if it did before, but regardless, getting Nasty Plot and having Hydro Pump and Thunderbolt and Volt Switch is very strong. And being a defensive Pokemon, you can play this mind game that it's your defensive check, and then you set up that Nasty Plot, fire off a Hydro Pump, probably pick up a KO unless they have a bulky water type. But in most cases, you're going to either net that 1-hit KO or that 2-hit KO easily. So, and it has the bulk to usually live at least 1 to 2 attacks. Very, very strong threat with Nasty Plot. So definitely something to watch out for on her special side. The only thing I will mention is this is the Pokemon that's carrying her special attack, in my opinion. I mean, the offensive part of her special attack, Sigilyph or Sigilyph, has a lot of great coverage, and its special attack isn't bad. But and it can run Life Orb with no chip from the Life Orb. But Rotom is the real threat in terms of special attack. Sigilyph is going to cover a lot and hit you, and probably pick up KOs, but Rotom is the one that you really want to worry about, because once that sets up and you don't have something to reliably outspeed it or 1-hit KO it, it's probably going to net a kill or maybe even 2. So that is something to watch out for as well. Like I just mentioned, Sigilyph can be in there. It does have Ice Beam, it does have Psyshock and Psychic. It does have Air Slash as well. Its special attack is not that bad. I just want to bring it up here so I know what I'm talking about here. It does have Heat Wave as well, which is great. Learns Shadow Ball. That's really all it is. All it has for the coverage. But Psyshock and Ice Beam and Shadow Ball and Heat Wave are still great coverage. Air Slash as well. Oh, it has Energy Ball. That is also good too. Dazzling Gleam. I was like looking at the bottom of the list and not reading above it. It also gets Dark Pulse and Cosmic Power, Ancient Power. So it does have great coverage. Do I think it's the threat though? Cosmic Power, Store Power is quite a big threat. I would like her to see her use that maybe later in the draft so she can hide it for a little bit, but I would like to see that at least once. It has the bulk to do that, has the speed tier to do that, and get that Cosmic Power off right away. With Magic Guard, that is no problem at all. People can't Toxic you down. Not a lot of people running Whirlwind and Roar, so definitely an option for her. And I am gonna retract that point on Rotom. I still think it's the biggest offensive special attacking threat, but Sigilyph is very, very close with that Cosmic Power, Stored Power. It also does get Calm Mind. I think Cosmic Power is a little bit better for it since it's bulky and it's fast. So it's not like super fast, but base 97 is pretty good, meaning it's going to get that Cosmic Power off right away. And it's able to roost in front of defensive Pokemon. Magic Guard is obviously allowing it to easily stay in there and not get toxic killed or things like that. It does fall victim to the Thunder Wave a little bit, but I mean, it can run Flame Orb or something like that to deter people from doing things like Thunder Wave. So another great offensive Pokemon, and can be run defensively. So again, really hard to prepare for her team. Really hard to prepare for her offensive team. Like what you're gonna bring to check those offensive Pokemon. You know, you bring Amoonguss to check Rotom. Well, Rotom's not the offensive threat. It's Sigilyph that's the offensive threat. So now you didn't bring a Pokemon to check Sigilyph. Who knows? This is just what I'm meaning. There's a lot of options for her to pick depending on the matchup. So next is defense. I rated this a 9 as well. You got Tangrowth. Tangrowth can do defense or special defense. It has 404 HP at max. Its SPDF, I believe, reaches 280. I could be wrong on that. I'm gonna check. I know it's its base SPDF is low. Yeah, its base SPDF is 50. It definitely doesn't reach 280. 218 is what it reaches. So generally you would run that with Assault Vest, and then bring it up normal, and then uninvested defense is 286. So meaning it can still tank defensive things. Pair that with Regenerator, it can definitely come in, tank something. Either Leech Seed, Toxic, Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, Knockoff, whatever it has. It has good coverage too, so Earthquake, Knockoff, Giga Drain, Sludge Bomb, and then of course Hidden Power is allowed right now, so definitely her backbone defensively. This Pokemon's going to be brought a lot. It can tank just about anything. If you don't got Toxic to deal with this Pokemon, it's probably just going to continue to chip down your team whenever it wants to. So next is Corsola, Corsola G. Very, very annoying Pokemon. Being Ghost type, you can't use any fighting type attacks against it. It is knockoff weak because of Eviolite, but it does get Will-O-Wisp, it gets Strength Sap, it gets Nightshade, of course, and it gets Stealth Rock. So it's a reliable Stealth Rocker for her as well. Strength Sap's really annoying to deal with, so it's very hard to take down, especially if you don't have knockoff, because it can lower your attack and heal its health full. It is a reliable way of recovery. So that pairing that with Will-O-Wisp, it's very hard to want to knock off this Pokemon and take the Will-O-Wisp, unless you got a way to heal up that Will-O-Wisp with either was it Lumberry or Heal Bell Aromatherapy. So very hard Pokemon to deal with defensively, and a good pair for that Tangrowth. Next you have Noctowl. I would like to see her use this more. I don't think she's used it once yet. Its SPDF is a lot higher than I expected, and its HP is a lot higher than I expected as well. I was quite surprised when I was calcing my Indeedee versus the Noctowl. Expanding Force did absolutely dog shit to it, so definitely a Pokemon to not overlook on our team. Its special defense is very, very good. That with Roost, which it has, and what was its options? I did look up this Pokemon earlier, but I don't remember. It's not the best Pokemon. I'm not saying it's like amazing or anything like that, but okay, yeah. So it runs Tinted Lens. This Pokemon's attacks that are not very effective on a target deal double damage, so that's quite annoying to deal with. Meaning you're probably not going to switch into a defensive threat unless it's got enough to tank those reliably. It does get Calm Mind and Curse. It's a defogger for her. It does get Hypnosis. They gave it Nasty Plot. Oh boy. Oh boy, I overlooked that when I was versing her. So definitely don't overlook that. It gets nasty plot. That could be very, very scary with its overall bulk. Rest, sleep talk, nasty plot, hurricane, or air slash. That would be really freaking scary. Or just nasty plot in general. Its speed is decent at 70, so it can do that if it wants to. Um, Definitely not a bad pick for the amount of points it was. I think it was two or one. It definitely wasn't higher than two or one, and if it was one, very very good pickup. So for what it's worth, especially if she needs to bring a defogger or she's trying to trick the opponent and bring this as a setup sweeper, does get agility as well. So nasty plot agility. I mean, it you could really do anything. Its base special attack is 86, so that's still quite good, especially after a nasty plot. That's definitely going to net some one hit KOs. I can't believe I totally overlooked that it had nasty plot. I'm glad that wasn't brought against me. Next, defensively, we have Mega Aggron. Or did I already mention this Pokemon? I think I mentioned it in the offense. But Mega Aggron, super fantastic ability and filter. Very tanky, reliable rocker, good heavy slammer because it's weight. Reliably chip Pokemon down for things like Cinderace, Passimian, or Zygarde, depending what she's using as her cleanup or sweeper. So pretty self-explanatory though. We know what Mega Aggron does. He does one of two things: Phaser with Dragon Tail, Chipper, Toxic, Stealth Rock, or a setup Curse Talker. So really really strong pick. I think it was 2 points. No, not 2 points. Tier 2. So it was only worth 5 points. I think that's a pretty good, solid pick. Especially with Filter. It's a steel type, so it's going to deter fairies, which I think fairies are strong in the draft because there isn't very many of them. And it's kind of hard to defend fairies since there isn't much that resists it lower in the tiers. So good defensive pick here. And the last two is Comfey and Sigilyph. Now, I could have mentioned Comfey in offense too because it has Calm Mind. It gets Triage, which if you don't know what Triage does, its healing moves have a +3 priority bracket. So Giga Drain, Draining Kiss, and I think Synthesis still gets the priority. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. But I know Giga Drain and Draining Kiss get that +3 priority. So that pair that with Calm Mind, and it's gonna heal from Draining Kiss a lot, is quite annoying. So with that +3 priority, it allows it to run bulk too. So its speed is good, so it doesn't really need it. It's gonna naturally outspeed some defensive threats anyways, and some offensive threats too. Its speed tier, I believe, without any investment is around 250-ish. Sorry. Comfey. Yeah, no investment is 236. So that's modest too, which again, its ability, giving those moves a +3 priority, allows it to run modest and HP EVs or defensive EVs or wherever you want to spread your EVs, but it doesn't have to be in speed because of that +3 priority that it gives to Draining Kiss and Giga Drain. So a very good offensive Pokemon, but defensively also very good. It gets Aromatherapy, it gets Defog, it gets U-Turn. It's very fast at a 100 speed, base speed tier. So that is good. Its SPDF is 110, its defense is 90, its HP is quite low at 51 base, but its speed and the ability to defog and heal bell or aromatherapy is very useful. So I think that's a really good pick for what it was worth. I think it was worth 3 points. Oops. At 3 points, I think that's worth it for sure. With the amount of things it can do, like I just mentioned. So I just want to double check if there's anything else. It does have Taunt as well. It has Tailwind, so those are really good options for it too. Just opens more doors for her, especially later in the draft. I feel like this is one of the things that people don't think about in the draft. their team could be really good early, but later in the draft, when everybody's seen your strategy, it gets very hard to use your team. And when you don't draft with flexible Pokemon, you become repetitive, and people draft against you the same because they know how to deal with it because they've seen you play the same or close to the same strategy every time. So, but moving on, we have speed 8. Her speed is good. It's not a 9 or a 10. She's got Cinderace, which is 370, which is great. It's bordering that 400 mark. Can be used as a Scarfer if she needs it. With U-turn, it doesn't really need the Scarf because of Sucker Punch, but if she does need to for whatever reason, need that Scarf Powerball or Scarf Gunk Shot or something, that she has that door open. Aside from Cinderace, though, her speed is mediocre. You got Passimian sitting at 330-ish, Sigilyph at 330-ish as well, Noctowl around the 300 mark, and Rotom around the 300 mark, and same with Zygarde. So Comfey being above the 300 mark, but nothing is 350 and above except Cinderace here. So that's in my opinion, that's an 8, but it's definitely not a 9 or a 10, and it's not close to a 9, and it's not close to a 10. So Cinderace is carrying the speed tier for her. Do I think it's needed? Not really. She can Scarf Passimian easily. Passimian doesn't need to really run any other item unless she's versing a slow team, and running Life Orb or Band is optimal, but again, not really needed. She has the bulk to just switch in things and switch out to raw switch, especially with regenerators. So the speed isn't highly needed on her team. Not as much as somebody like Louis who needs that speed to allow his Blacephalon and things like that to run free with Beast Boost. So she has the bulk to set up and just sweep with Sigilyph, Rotom, Comfey. Even a bulk up Passimian is there, and a bulk up Cinderace is there as well. Curse Talk, of course, and Zygarde just being Zygarde, bulky Zygarde, is very annoying to deal with. So, not to mention she's got Dragon Dance on Zygarde to bump that speed tier if she needs it, agility on Noctowl and stuff like that. So, Rotom Wash is also another reliable Scarfer. It has the bulk to come in multiple times and Volt Switch out, or Will-O-Wisp, or Hydro Pump, or Defog as well. So, really good ways to handle speed on her team is how I'll say it, and that's why I rated it an 8. Next is Hazards, 10. I would generally probably rate this a 9, but since she has one of the best hazard controls in the game, being Cinderace, which deals with screens and rocks and spikes all at the same time, is really good, especially with the introduction of heavy duty boots. You put heavy duty boots on Cinderace, run Court Change. If the opponent's reliant on screens and rocks, well, they're deterred to set that up unless they want them on their own side. And the opponent needs to be wary of, okay, I'm going to bring screens and rocks. I'm going to set them up on the opponent. Do I have ways to get screens and rocks off? Because if I don't, and Laurel brings Court Change, and she Court Changes 8 turns of screens and rocks on my side of the field, well, not I'm the one that just got screwed. So I think that's what bumps it from 9 to 10. But enough with Cinderace here. The other hazards on her team that are really good is Mega Steel. Long Morning. Mega Aggron with Stealth Rocks. Very reliable with Filter. It's guaranteed to get rocks up. I don't think anything one-hit KOs Mega Aggron. If you guys know something that one-hit KOs Mega Aggron, I would really like to know, actually, if there's anything out there that one-hit KOs. If somebody's got the calc, I'd really like to see that, because I did not look that up. So, Corsola G, also very reliable. Deters people wanting to knock it off with Will-O-Wisp and Strength Sap. So it's generally going to get rocks up, usually when it wants to, unless they have a lot of threats for that Corsola G. That's really what she's going to set up rocks with. There isn't really any other Pokemon that's going to set up rocks. But she has a lot of ways to also get hazards off. So like I mentioned, the Cinderace, of course, court change. You got defog on Comfey, you got defog on Sigilyph, you got defog on Rotom Wash, and you got defog on Noctowl as well. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ways to deal with hazards if she doesn't want hazards on her side of the field. And 2 really reliable ways to set up rocks as well. And you also got Leech Seed with Tangrowth, which is bound to always come out at least once or twice. So definitely a 10. That court change on Cinderace is what bumps from 9 to 10, because it's really hard to rate it 10 because she doesn't have a lot of hazard setup, but she has really good hazard removal and the best hazard removal in the game, in my opinion. So definitely deserves a 10. Momentum, an 8. So like I was saying earlier, she has a lot of ways to handle speed on her team, but she has a lot of momentum as well. She's got U-turn in Cinderace, she's got U-turn in Comfey, she's got Volt Switch in Rotom, and U-turn in Passimian. So she can U-turn out into all of her defensive Pokemon, chip down the opponent, and get an optimal switch in. Or switch back into another defensive Pokemon that's good in that case. So continuing to chip down the opponent between her walls is what's keeping up her momentum and allowing Cinderace and Passimian to get those optimal switches in, on a double or something like that. The momentum from Passimian is good as well because, its coverage is good. Same with Cinderace. She keeps up the pressure by forcing people to switch because they don't know what she's running. Because the move pools are so good between Passimian, Cinderace, Comfey, Rotom, and Sigilyph. They cover so many things. So this, of course, in the end opens doors for Zygarde in the end of the game to set up and sweep with its bulk, coil, and Dragon Dance. Same with Mega Aggron if he's that win con setting up in the end, getting rid of the the offensive threats for it. So it's an 8. It's not like Chris's where it's like I always fall back on Chris's momentum because he's got that double Intimidate, and Incineroar covers a lot of Landorus's weaknesses, and Landorus covers Incineroar's, and they both Intimidate. So that's where I'd say the momentum, that vortex gets created where it's like, holy fuck, he's gonna U-turn here, he's gonna parting shot here, he's gonna U-turn there. Now I'm double intimidated. Oh fuck, I need to switch. Then bam, he gets the double prediction. He figures out who you're gonna switch into, and that momentum is just like immediately halted for the opponent. Whereas Laurel's, I feels like she has a lot of ways to get in her defensive Pokemon and chip down the opponent and keep up a pace that the opponent can't deal with because they need to get a double to deal with whatever defensive threat's going to come out. So I'm sorry if my momentum explanation for Laurel's team was a little bit hard to understand, but if you watch her games, you'll understand what I mean by that. Multiple ways to handle speed and with priority and stuff like that, but just her defensive Pokemon really slow down the opponent's momentum. It helps her continue a pace of chipping that the opponent usually can't keep up unless they got regenerator Pokemon or really reliable wish passers, things like Florges and Jirachi, stuff like that. So overall I rated her team a 44. I think that's one of my better ratings on here. As I said earlier, I think Laurel always drafts a really strong team, and if she ever has a loss, it's usually from team building or in-game decisions. If you guys want a good idea of how to build a team and what to cover, I think Laurel covers almost everything on her team very, very well. So definitely one of my favorite drafts for sure. I couldn't name a Pokemon that she could trade away that would make her team better. The only Pokemon that you could maybe trade away is Noctowl, because it's there as a specially defensive Pokemon, but Rotom is specially defensive, Mega Aggron can be specially defensive, Tangrowth can be specially defensive, Sigilyph can be specially defensive, Comfey can be specially defensive, so you could trade away Noctowl for some spicy pick or something like that, but Laurel being able to save trades is going to be really useful later in the draft, especially when we have such a long draft with 20 players. Her her having a really good start in her draft, as it like getting a really good team together right away, is going to be very useful to her in the end. So I hope you guys are enjoying these. This is all I got on Laurel's team. I hope it wasn't too like, oh my god, Laurel's team is great, because I mean she does have weaknesses, right? You got earthquake. Bolt breaker is a big problem for her as well, because you know then you get that triple earthquake. But again, those things are covered with Zygarde, it's covered with Tangrowth, it's covered with Sigilyph, it's covered with Noctowl, can be covered with Corsola. You know, I personally can't see a whole lot of weakness here. Maybe an ice weakness between Sigilyph, Noctowl, and Zygarde and Tangrowth. That's 4 people weak to ice. She hasn't brought Noctowl yet though. And those Pokemon that are weak to ice, Zygarde and Sigilyph are going to get hit pretty hard by it. But Tangrowth definitely eats ice attacks and ice beams with Assault Vest. So, like I was saying, she covers a lot of things on her team very, very well. So I don't know. I don't know what I would say. Status is an issue for her. She only has aromatherapy in Comfey. So toxic is kind of an issue. But toxic invites things like Aggron in to heavy slam you down. It also invites Sigilyph to come in and either set up or, you know, psycho shift you or whatever the case. Yeah, I would say status might be the best way to deal with her team. Bringing a bulky defensive team with status, lots of protects and subs. I think that might be a strong way to deal with her. Phasers is going to be really good too, so that she can't set up and constantly make her figure out what to switch into or what to do, whether to attack or switch, if the opponent's going to phase or toxic, things like that. So overall though, 44, phenomenal team in my opinion. If you guys got that Mega Aggron calc, I would like to see it if there's anything that one hit KOs a Mega Aggron in its regular defensive spread, EV spread. I don't have much to say on Laurel's weaknesses. It is very hard for me to figure out weaknesses. Even when I was versing her, I found it very hard to find something that was a win con for me. Since Indeedee was walled by, you know, Sigilyph, walled by Aggron, Assault Vest, Tangrowth even did well against it, so I didn't have much. So if you guys know anything, feel free to comment on it. But if you don't want to expose anything, that's totally cool too. I definitely don't want to expose people's entire team and all their weaknesses. So if I miss things, sometimes it's purposely, sometimes it's unintentional, and I just don't see it. So even when I was versing her though, and I was looking into every single Pokemon, I could not find very optimal ways to win. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys are enjoying these, and I hope you guys come back for the last one. Thanks a lot.